spent 37 years building that ranch, 37 years waking up before sunrise, 37 years of frozen fingers, broken fences, droughts, cattle auctions, and praying the bank wouldn't call before harvest season ended, and somehow, none of that hurt as much as watching my own son slowly disappear after he married her. Her name was Vanessa, beautiful, educated, perfect teeth, perfect makeup, perfect little fake laugh that sounded like champagne bubbles, the kind of woman who could insult you while smiling. At first I tried. God knows I tried. I invited them every Sunday after church. Made peach cobbler from scratch because Ethan loved it growing up. Wrapped birthday gifts with handwritten notes. Sent care packages when they moved to Dallas. But over time, I noticed something. The calls stopped coming from my son, then the texts became shorter, then holidays became complicated, and every single time, Vanessa had an explanation. We're just so busy. Dallas traffic is insane. You know how demanding Ethan's job is. But the truth? The truth was written all over social media. They had time for ski trips, wine tastings, luxury resorts in Napa, matching Christmas pajamas with her parents. Just never time for me. And the worst part? They lived less than 4 hours away. 4 whores. Do you know what kind of pain it is to realize strangers online see more of your son than you do? I'd sit alone in that ranch house at night, scrolling through pictures of my own family, like some outsider peeking through a window. Meanwhile, her parents got everything, front row seats to their lives, vacations, birthdays, anniversaries, Sunday brunch. Her mother even posted once, "Family is who shows up consistently." That one sat in my chest for weeks because I had shown up my entire life. I showed up when Ethan broke his arm at 12. I showed up after his father died and I had to run the ranch alone. I showed up working 18-hour days so he could go to college and escape this life if he wanted. But suddenly, after Vanessa entered the picture, AB became embarrassing. Too country, too old, too ranch. And eventually, I stopped begging. That's the thing age teaches you. At some point, dignity matters more than hope. So I quit calling first. And something terrifying happened. Silence. Weeks passed. Then months no one checked in. No one asked if I was alive, not even after the winter storm nearly collapsed my north barn. My neighbor Hank came over with his tractor. Not my son, Hank. And that's when something inside me quietly broke. Not dramatically, not with screaming or tears. Just a soft little crack in the soul. Like ice giving way under your feet. Then came the diagnosis. I found out by accident, really. Just a routine scan after some chest pain. The doctor sat across from me with that careful voice doctors use when they're trying not to sound afraid. "There's a mass." Funny thing about bad news, the world doesn't stop. You still hear the air conditioner humming. You still notice the coffee stain on the desk. You still wonder if you remembered to feed the horses. I remember driving home in complete silence. No radio, no tears. Just staring at the highway thinking, who do I even call? My husband was gone. Most of my friends were dead. And my son barely remembered I existed, so I didn't tell him. Not at first. Instead, I started getting my affairs in order. And that's when everything changed. Because the truth is, that ranch wasn't just a ranch anymore. 15 years earlier, an energy company had quietly approached us about the mineral rights under the land. At the time, my husband refused. Said the land wasn't for sale. But after he passed, I listened, carefully. Turns out there was enough oil and natural gas beneath that property to make corporations salivate. For years, I ignored the offers. 20 million, 30 million, 50 million. Each year the number climbed higher, until one Tuesday morning, AB sat across from 3 executives in tailored suits while they slid a contract across the table worth $90 million. 90 million. I remember staring at all those zeros thinking how absurd life was. One minute you're bottle-feeding calves in mud boots. Next minute people treat you like royalty because your dirt became valuable. I signed the papers 2 weeks later, quietly. No announcement, no social media post, no phone calls. And for the first time in years, AB felt free. I paid off every debt in town tied to old ranch families struggling to survive. Anonymous donations, medical bills, farm equipment loans. I even funded scholarships at the local high school. But I didn't tell Ethan I wanted to see something first. I wanted to know whether love still existed without money attached to it. Then came Christmas, the first call from Ethan in almost 3 months. "Hey, Mom." His voice sounded unusually cheerful. That alone told me everything. He never sounded cheerful calling me anymore. "Vanessa and I were thinking, maybe we should do Christmas at your place this year." I nearly laughed, not because it was funny, because it was transparent. 3 days earlier, the ranch sale had leaked online. Small-town news spreads like wildfire, especially when $90 million is involved. Suddenly, Abby mattered again. I could practically hear Vanessa smiling through the phone. "We miss you so much. Of course you do." I said yes anyway, because revenge, real revenge, requires patience. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in snow. The ranch house glowed warm against the white hills. Lights hanging from every fence post. I cooked like I used to when Ethan was young. Cornbread casserole, pecan pie, all his favorites. And when their black luxury SUV finally pulled into the driveway, Abby watched Vanessa step out wearing a cream-colored designer coat that probably cost more than my first pickup truck. Then Ethan emerged carrying expensive wine. And suddenly they were affectionate again, warm, attentive, interested. Vanessa hugged me for the first time in years. Years. Oh my gosh, this place looks amazing. Not home. Ethan kept smiling too hard, asking questions he hadn't cared about in a decade. "How's your health, Mom? You need anything around here? We should visit more often." Every word felt rehearsed, like actors reading from a script called Pretending to Care. Then came the moment that sealed it. Vanessa spotted the old family photo above the fireplace, the one from Ethan's high school graduation. She tilted her head and said, "We should really preserve family legacy now." Legacy. There it was, not love, not regret. Legacy, money wrapped in sentimental language, and suddenly all the loneliness of the past few years flooded back into me at once. The ignored birthdays, the unanswered texts, the holidays spent alone watching snow fall through the kitchen window, the ache of realizing your child became a stranger. But instead of breaking, Abby smiled, calmly, quietly, because for the first time, I held the power. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Vanessa laughed too loudly. Ethan kept refilling my wine glass. They talked about future family plans and being closer. Then Vanessa finally asked the question she'd been dying to ask all night. "So, what are you planning to do now that the ranch sold?" Silence settled over the table. The fire crackled softly behind us. I folded my napkin carefully. Then I looked directly at my son. "You remember when your father died?" Ethan blinked. "Of course. You remember how I worked 18-hour days to keep this place alive?" He nodded slowly. "And you remember disappearing once you no longer needed me?" Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. "Carol, I don't think." "No," I said gently. "Let's be honest tonight. It's Christmas." Ethan stared at his plate. I continued softly. "For years, I begged for scraps of attention from my own family. And suddenly, after news of $90 million hit town, here you are. Mom, that's not fair. Isn't it?" My voice never rose. That's what made it worse. Calm truth cuts deeper than screaming. Vanessa crossed her arms. "We came because we care about you." I smiled. "Then why didn't you come when I had cancer scans?" The room froze. Ethan looked up sharply. "What? You didn't know because you never called long enough to ask how I was." His face drained of color, and for one brief second, Abby saw genuine shame. Real shame, not performative guilt. The kind that punches straight through the chest. "Mom, why wouldn't you tell me?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Because I finally understood something." The fire popped behind me. "You only notice what you're afraid to lose." Vanessa tried again. "That's not true." So I reached beside my chair and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a copy of my new will. I slid it across the table. Ethan stared at it. Vanessa practically stopped breathing, then he opened it. And his eyes widened because every cent, all $90 million, was gone, allocated, placed into trusts, scholarships, community foundations, veteran housing, children's hospitals, local ranch preservation programs, there was only one thing left specifically for Ethan, my husband's old watch. That was it. Vanessa looked physically ill. But this has to be temporary, she whispered. I leaned back in my chair. No, Ethan kept flipping pages desperately. Mom, there's nothing here. I know, his voice cracked. You're leaving us nothing? And there it was. Not did we hurt you? Not how sick are you? Not can we fix this? Just nothing? I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a grown man who had traded his soul for comfort so gradually he never even noticed it happening. And suddenly, it didn't feel angry anymore, just tired. I already gave you everything, I said softly. The years, the sacrifices, the love, the chances. Tears welled in his eyes then, real tears. I made mistakes, Mom. Yes, I whispered. You did. The room fell silent except for the wind outside. Then something unexpected happened. Vanessa stood up abruptly. At first I thought she was angry. But instead, she started crying. Not elegant crying. Ugly crying. Mascara running crying. And through sobs, she said something I never expected. My parents taught me money was love. I stared at her. She wiped her face shakily. They only paid attention when someone was successful. Important. Wealthy. I thought that was normal. Ethan looked stunned. She turned toward him. And I pushed you away from your mom because I thought poor meant failure. For the first time since I met her, she looked human. Broken but human. And suddenly the night changed, not into forgiveness, not yet. But truth, real truth, the kind family spent decades avoiding, Ethan finally broke down completely. I was ashamed, he admitted. The words barely came out. I grew up watching you struggle. I hated the ranch because it took Dad away all the time. After college, I wanted distance from that life so badly that eventually, I distanced myself from you too. I closed my eyes because that one hurt the most. Not Vanessa, not the money. The idea that my son looked at the life we built and saw only hardship instead of love. Then he whispered something that shattered me. I thought if I became successful enough, maybe I'd stop feeling like that scared ranch kid. Silence, deep silence. And for the first time in years, Abby saw my little boy again, not the corporate man, not the absent son. The little boy who used to fall asleep in the truck after long cattle drives. The boy who cried when his father died. The boy I thought I'd lost forever. And suddenly revenge didn't feel satisfying anymore, just sad. Because when families break apart slowly, nobody wins. Not really. I stood up slowly and walked to the fireplace. Above it hung the old photo from Ethan's graduation, back before life became transactional. Back when we still reached for each other naturally. You know what the strange thing is? I said quietly. I would have given you every penny. They both looked up. All of it. Happily. If you had simply loved me when you thought I had nothing. Vanessa started crying harder. Ethan buried his face in his hands. And outside, snow kept falling across the ranch I no longer owned. Finally, after several minutes, Ethan looked up. What happens now? I turned toward him. That depends. On what? Whether you came tonight for money, or whether somewhere underneath all the damage, you still want a mother, he cried then. The kind of crying grown men usually save for funerals. And maybe that was fitting, because something had died in that room. The pretending, the manipulation, the silence. But maybe something else had survived too. Not trust. Trust takes years, but honesty. And honesty is where healing begins. That Christmas ended differently than anyone expected. No dramatic hugs, no perfect movie ending. Just 3 broken people sitting quietly beside a fire while snow covered the fields outside. But before they left, Ethan walked over and hugged me the way he used to when he was little. Tight, like he was afraid. And softly, against my shoulder, he whispered, I don't care about the money. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he didn't. Time would tell. But for the first time in years, he stayed after the conversation ended. And sometimes, that's where love starts again. After they left that night, I stood alone on the porch for a long time. Snow drifted across the fields in silver waves under the moonlight. The ranch house was quiet again. But not the same kind of quiet. Before, the silence felt abandoned. Now it felt uncertain, like life itself was holding its breath. Inside, 3 coffee mugs still sat on the kitchen table beside crumpled napkins and half-eaten pie, proof that, for one evening at least, I wasn't alone. I should felt victorious. That's what revenge stories promise, isn't it? The big reveal, the tears, the guilt, the satisfying moment where the people who hurt you finally realize your value. But standing there in the cold, all I felt was exhausted, because no amount of money can buy back lost years. And no speech, no matter how honest, erases loneliness. A week later, Ethan called again, not a text, not a holiday obligation, a real phone call. I almost didn't answer. Part of me wanted to protect the peace I'd finally built, but another part, the mother part, still hoped. "Hey, Mom." His voice sounded smaller somehow, like the confident businessman had cracked. "Hi." A long pause followed. Then he said something surprising. "I started therapy." I blinked. "I didn't ask, I know." Another silence, then. "But you deserved better from me." That one landed hard, because when you've been hurt long enough, accountability sounds almost unreal, like hearing rain in a drought. Over the next few weeks, the calls continued. Short at first, awkward, careful, like 2 strangers trying to remember an old language. Sometimes we talked about weather, sometimes cattle prices, sometimes nothing important at all. But the important thing was, he kept calling, not once, repeatedly. Consistency, that's how trust comes back. Not through grand gestures, through repetition. Meanwhile, Vanessa surprised me the most. One afternoon in January, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find her standing there alone, no designer coat this time. No perfect makeup, just red eyes and a nervous smile. "I brought soup." I stared at her for a moment. "You drove 4 hours to bring soup." She gave a tiny shrug. It sounded less terrifying than saying I wanted to apologize. I let her in. She walked through the ranch house slowly, almost like she was seeing it for the first time. The old wood floors, the faded family photos, my husband's boots near the back door. "You kept all this going alone?" she asked quietly. "For a long time." She looked around again, and I watched something shift in her expression, not pity. Respect. Real respect. That afternoon, we sat at the kitchen table for nearly 3 hours. And for the first time, she told the truth about her childhood. Her father had measured love in money. Success meant attention. Failure meant silence. Birthdays came with price tags. Affection came with conditions. "You know what my mother said when Ethan got promoted?" Vanessa asked bitterly. I shook my head. She said, "Now you married correctly." I felt something cold settle in my chest, because suddenly so many things made sense. People pass pain down like inheritance, sometimes without even realizing it. Vanessa stared into her tea. I thought status was security. I thought if we built the perfect life, nobody could reject us. Then she looked at me. But all we built was distance. I didn't forgive her that day. Forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's a slow thaw. But I listened. And sometimes listening is the first form of mercy. By February, Ethan started visiting every other weekend. At first, I suspected guilt motivated him. Maybe it did. But then I noticed something. He stayed even when uncomfortable. He helped repair fences, cleaned the barn, sat with me during doctor appointments, not glamorous work, not social media-worthy moments, just ordinary presence. And strangely enough, that mattered more than tears. One icy morning, we were fixing part of the north pasture fence when Ethan suddenly said, "I used to hate this place." I hammered a nail quietly. I know. I blamed the ranch for Dad dying early. That made me stop. My husband's heart attack had happened during calving season. Ethan was only 16. I thought if we'd had a normal life, maybe he'd still be here. There it was, the grief beneath the anger. People rarely become cruel for no reason. Usually there's pain buried underneath. I leaned against the fence post. "Your father loved this land." "I know that now." His voice cracked slightly. But as a kid, all I saw was what it took from us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Wind swept across the empty fields. Then I said softly, "And now?" He looked around the ranch slowly. "Now I see what it gave. That nearly broke me." Because sometimes healing arrives in one simple sentence. March came, then April, My treatments began. Turns out the mass was treatable after all. Not easy, not guaranteed, but treatable. And during every appointment, Ethan was there, always there, reading old magazines in waiting rooms, arguing with nurses about coffee quality, driving me home when treatments made me weak. One afternoon, after chemo left me exhausted, I woke up on the couch to hear laughter in the kitchen. Real laughter. I walked in quietly. Ethan and Vanessa were baking one of my old recipes from a stained ranch cookbook. Flour covered the counters. Vanessa looked horrified at the mess. Ethan looked happier than I'd seen him in years. And suddenly I realized something painful. This was all I ever wanted. Not money, not revenge. Presence. That's it. Just presence. Then came the moment that changed everything. Late spring, the final closing ceremony for the ranch transfer. I hadn't visited the land since the sale became official. Couldn't bring myself to. But that morning, I drove out one last time. The hills rolled gold beneath the sunrise. Fence posts stretched toward the horizon, and memories hit me from every direction. My husband teaching Ethan to ride, summer storms. Branding season, Christmas mornings by the fire, an entire lifetime stitched into dirt and sky. Ethan stood beside me quietly, then he asked, "Do you regret selling it?" I thought for a long time before answering. No. He looked surprised. I smiled faintly. The ranch gave me everything it was supposed to give. And what's that? I looked at him. You. His eyes filled instantly. And right there beside the land that built our family, my son cried like a child again. Not from shame this time. From love. A few months later, something unexpected happened. The story leaked online. Small-town reporter picks up local ranch widow, sells property for $90 million. Then someone connected the Christmas fallout. Then social media got involved. Suddenly strangers everywhere were debating our family like we were some television drama. Some called me a hero, others called me cruel. People online always want villains and saints. Real life rarely works that way. Because the truth? Vanessa wasn't evil. Ethan wasn't heartless. And I wasn't innocent either. We all failed each other in different ways. But pain shared honestly has a strange power. It can either destroy a family forever or rebuild it stronger. One evening nearly a year after that Christmas, Ethan invited me to dinner at their home in Dallas. I almost said no. Old wounds make you cautious. But when I arrived, Abby stopped cold at the front door, because hanging in their entryway was a massive framed photograph of the ranch at sunset, and beneath it, engraved in small bronze letters, were the words, "Remember where love built you." I covered my mouth instantly. Vanessa walked over nervously. We wanted our future kids to know where their family started. Future kids, not legacy, not inheritance. Family. Then Ethan handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was my husband's old watch, the one I'd left him in the will. "I can't keep this," he said softly. "It belongs to you until you decide otherwise." I looked at my son for a long moment, then at Vanessa, then around the warm house filled with the smell of dinner and quiet effort. And for the first time in many years, Abby felt something I thought was gone forever. Home. Not the ranch, not the land. People. That's what home was all along. And later that night, after dinner, Ethan walked me to my car. Before I got in, he stopped me. "Mom?" "Yes." He swallowed hard. "If you had never sold the ranch, would you still have told us how hurt you were?" That question stayed with me, because deep down Abby knew the answer. Probably not. Sometimes people only listen when loss enters the room. I touched his face gently. Then I said the truest thing I've ever learned. "Money didn't change your heart, Ethan." He looked confused. "It just revealed it." And as I drove away under the Texas night sky, I realized something strange. The $90 million was never the real story. The real story was whether a broken family could find its way back to each other before time ran out. And thankfully, ours did.